Do you bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen. Here we go! Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate. We love to argue. You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good football Friday, Birds fans. You got your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen. We sounding okay there, Johnny Mac? You hearing me?
Oh, yeah, I'm hearing you. A little bit of a hiccup. I hear what you're saying. Hopefully it won't go south on us, Jody, but good to see you. How you feeling? Number one, the tremendous work ethic of Jody McDonald. Test COVID positive. He's out one day, 24 hours, and there, bang, you're back. It's pretty impressive.
It was a tough 48 hours because as soon as I got off the air with you on Wednesday, I knew I was hurting. And the wife said, "Oh, you're taking a test." And we went over this last week. You believe you've taken 100 plus COVID tests, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. How many times they come back positive?
Zero. Crossing the finger.
So you're 0 for 100 and change. I'm 1 for 1.
Yeah, I'm in a hell of a slump, Jody.
Yeah,
which is a good slump.
You're going to have to test positive a hell of a lot more to try and catch up to your partner who's batting 1,000 in COVID.
That's impressive.
tests.
That's Hall of Fame numbers. There's no way I'm getting the Mendoza line, never mind 300. So.
Understood. Yeah, if you got close to the Mendoza line, we'd be sending flowers to your funeral.
Exactly.
So glad to hear we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. But yeah, I'm feeling better. Doctors prescribed a medicine for me, and it's working. It's cutting back on the aspects of COVID, but it's doing a number of my digestive tract, which is no fun whatsoever. So I'm still fighting my way through it, but knew by late afternoon yesterday I'd be good to go today because I'd get another good night's sleep there. Wednesday night, I went to bed at 8 o'clock. The last time I went to bed at 8 o'clock, I think I was in the 7th grade. I have not gone to bed at 8 o'clock since I don't know how long, but the rest has helped, and I do feel better. And it's a good thing because we should be getting pumped for the start of a football season. We're down to just 11 days before camp opens up. A day or two later, Johnny will get his first grass time with the 2022 Eagles. Which, yes, that's what this city looks forward to. I know I've told this show many a time on my radio shows. I'm not sure if I've told it on Birds 365, but I moved to town in 1990. I came in from New York, which is, and forever will be a baseball town. It's the number one sport in that town. Always had been Yankees, first the Dodgers and the Giants, then the Mets. It has been a baseball town first and foremost. Not that there aren't huge fan bases for both the Giants and the Jets, but they just don't compare to the size and the passion of the baseball fans in town. And I'd never worked in a town that wasn't a baseball first town. And I had to come here to Philadelphia to learn that, other towns can put football before baseball. Didn't know it, wasn't sure about it. First show I ever did on WIP, I walked into my boss's office. And I laid out the show for him before Lenny Dykstra was going to be batting leadoff in the All-Star game that night. and I finished running down the things I want to talk about during the day. It's July. It's a similar date to this one. Tonight, this weekend is going to be the All-Star weekend. So it's right around the same time, 32 years ago. And my boss said, well, what do you think about the Eagles? And I said, boss, it's July. There's nothing going on. The Eagles aren't in camp. We got 2 weeks before camp open up. Free agency is done. I doubt highly I'm going to get that many Eagle calls. He said, well, if I were you, I'd have an Eagle opinion or two ready. I said, all right, well, I'll see if I can come up with something. Hopped on the air, talked about Lenny in the All-Star game in the Phillies second half of the season, blah, blah, telephone lines open. 4 of my first 5 calls were, is it smart to sign Jim McMahon? Will he be a deterrent to Randall Cunningham? Should we have a quarterback looking over the current starting quarterback's shoulder? How long is it going to take for Jim McMahon to take the starting quarterback from Randall Cunningham? These are 4 of my first 5 calls. I got 1 baseball call days before the All-Star game, and 4 out of the 5 callers wanted to talk about the Eagles and their backup quarterback. So it didn't take long for me to learn that Philadelphia is a football-first town, and with the fact that we're only 11 days away from camp opening up, yeah, this town should be ready to rock.
Yeah, they should be, man. We had your other partner, Glenn Macnow, on earlier in the week, and I think Glenn explained it well. It's like you get really, really pumped up for the opening of training camp, and then you start to say, this is kind of boring, and you look forward to that first preseason game, and you say, this is kind of, let's get to September. I think it's every year, but it is exciting, the first of training camp. And it's ironic because you've been doing this for so long, Jody, and you've been doing it so long in Philadelphia, as you mentioned. This was a baseball town at some point. I mean, you probably have to go back to the 76, 80-ish era of Schmidt and all those guys. But this, like the rest of the country, was baseball first, the national pastime. And I think I've asked you that question before. So you got here in 1990, and could you have sensed the shift? Shift already happened.
Yeah.
So it happened sometime between, say, 1980 and 1990. I can't put my finger on when it exactly happened.
Oh, I'll give you 2 words. Dick Vermeil.
Dick Vermeil, yeah, going into the 1960. Dick Vermeil just had his, and people could see this on JAKIB Sports, wrote about it at Sports Illustrated as well. He had his virtual, everything's virtual still in the Hall of Fame, the media availability this week. And he talked about his time in Philadelphia. And it was basically 1960 to 1976 when Dick Vermeil got here. Awful team, awful organization, awful ownership, awful players. And it took Dick a couple years, 1978. So almost 2 decades. Then they finally get 1980, the championship game and the Super Bowl. So 2 decades for that. But yeah, he definitely is the start of it. And look, bottom line, they have a Hall of Fame coach, right? And the Eagles are just part of Dick Vermeil's lore. If you go, say, from 1976 to the present, you're not the best coach in Eagles history. It's probably the second best. Although you could, I guess, if you want to put all the eggs in the Super Bowl basket, you got to give Doug some respect. But look, Andy Reid's one of the greatest coaches of all time. Doesn't matter. Doug won a Super Bowl. Doesn't matter. Neither of them are more popular than Dick Vermeil. It's amazing. That one I can't figure out completely, but it's true. And it's kind of amazing. But you're right. I mean, he turned this organization around. And by the way, Jeffrey Lurie deserves a ton of credit because he's one of the best owners in the NFL. I'll criticize him when he deserves to be criticized. Like he sticks his nose into too many things. But it is way better to have an owner who cares and who wants to win than the opposite, who's just, in the industry because it's easy to make money and you can flip the team. I don't know if you saw the story, Jody, but $11 billion of national revenue for the NFL last year, obviously an all-time record. That means from day one, you pretty much know you're getting $335 million if you're an NFL owner just to run the team from revenue sharing. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good start. So you know, I think Front Page Sports was the one who did it. I'll try to figure it out. But you know, when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys, he spent less than $335 million. So many of the owners spent less than that. Just the operating income that you get to start the season. And that's not all of it, that's just the national stuff.
Right.
Is more than most owners, you know, spent to buy these teams. So to have an owner like Jeffrey Lurie is a heck of a lot better than the alternative. And for the older fan, the younger generation has only had Jeffrey Lurie. He's been here for a long time, over a quarter century. But those who lived through, you know, the Brahmans and the Tosa, they know better. They know better. And
Dick Vermeil was, as you said, we can argue his placement on a list of all-time great Eagle coaches and go back to Greasy Neal and figure out where most popular, Dick Vermeil. There's not even a debate. There's no conversation. Not necessarily the best. Achievements are achievements. Track records are track records. Resumes are resumes. Just most popular, beloved. Oh, yeah, Dick Vermeil. And I think that was, if there was a debate as to whether it was a baseball town or football town first, yeah, Dick Vermeil swung the pendulum enough to make it a football first town. All right, Johnny Mac, we got two good guests coming up today. Our buddy Martin Frank from Delaware News Journal and our very own Barrett Brooks will join us in hour number 2. Here's where I want to start with Eagles today, because you wrote about it, and it's funny because I was going to bring it up before I saw your latest missive. Where is the Eagles' biggest drop-off? We go into the season with the belief, unless you got guys who are on the PUP list before the season ever starts. No, by the way, Eagles have 2 of those. We believe that everybody's going to be healthy. We foolishly believe they're all going to be healthy for all 17 games. That never happens. Yeah. But that's the way you look at it during the offseason when you're evaluating what kind of team you have. And you know who the 22 starters are going to be. And even with that, there's some reaches because certain positions lend themselves to situational substitutions and guys not going to play 100% of snaps on his side of the ball. But you know basically who your 22 lead guys are. And then there are the next 22 who back up each of those 11 positions on offense and defense. And if there is an injury at one of those positions, you have to put in your backup guy. How big is the drop-off? From your starter, from your best guy, from the guy you're banking on taking damn close to 100% of the snaps to whoever you're going to have to fill in afterwards. And I don't think there is any question that the guy the Eagles can least afford to lose to an injury, 1 week, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, God forbid an entire season, that guy's Dallas Goedert. Because not only is Goddard prepped to have a big season, most of these off-season rankings lists have him somewhere between the 5th and the 7th best tight end in the National Football League. That's a pretty high ranking. The Eagles only have a handful of guys who are ranked higher than that in most of these lists. And most of them, by the way, on the offensive line, where luckily they have depth. And if they lost an offensive line guy, they wouldn't get killed because they've got good guys who are ready to come off the bench. The backup tight end position for the Eagles is a little bit thin, to say the least. And I saw your article where you speculated on some guys above and beyond those that are already on the roster. And let me, unfortunately, go ahead and say the guys on the roster aren't good enough. If they were to get involved with looking for another tight end, you threw out a couple interesting names.
Yeah, well, that's Alex Schmidt did that, and he's one of our interns here at JAKIB Sports, so I want to give him credit. He's the one who threw out some names, potential. When I did my tight end preview, I mentioned, you know, there's a significant drop-off between Dallas Goedert and whoever, Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, whoever you want to assume is going to be the tight end too. So you start, and by the way, we talked about that on the show. You start to talk about, you know, this is a position you might have to look outside the building, whether that means trade, whether that means cut down to 53 and who's on the waiver wire, there's a chance you can improve by going outside the building. You know, and Alex brought up some big names. Eric Ebron, probably the most notable, who, you know, had 13 touchdowns. I think everybody remembers him, former first-round pick, injury prone. It's kind of, where are you if you're the Eagles? And it seems to me, like, do you think you're a significant contender? If you're the Eagles and you're looking in the mirror and you think you're a significant contender, you probably want a Band-Aid in case something happens to Dallas Goedert. That you could at least have this, you're going to have a drop-off, you know, that's understandable. As you mentioned, some of those positions on the offensive line. Well, if they lose Jordan Mailata or Jason Kelsey or Lane Johnson, they're going to have a drop-off, but at least you're going to have a competent player to insert because they have such impressive depth. I can't necessarily say that at tight end. You hope it, but hope is not a strategy. A wise man once told me that. Howie, I'm looking at you. So, you know, if hope is not a strategy, I think it's pretty clear the Eagles want to look at their young guys. They want to hope that Jack Stoll improves. They want to hope that Grant Calcaterra is what he was at Oklahoma, and he's really a second or third round talent or something of that nature. And maybe that takes off, and they'll revisit it if they get to camp and say, okay, these guys aren't ready. This isn't good. Then they might start looking outside the building. But I always say the big name, you know, the big name trap, as Joe Banner likes to call it, you got to be wary of that as well. You know, everybody knows Eric Ebron. You know, everybody is coming off injuries. That 13 touchdown season was, I don't know, 2018, a long time ago. Not that player now. So you got to be careful. You got to weigh it, but they need help. And one other name I'm going to throw out there as well is Hassan Reddick on the defensive side. When you talk about depth, I mean, if they lose Hassan Reddick, they're not even going to play that position. They're just going to change how they play. They're going to play more traditional defensive ends. They're going to play more Brandon Graham, maybe even Teron Jackson as a young player. Their backups behind Hassan Reddick are Patrick Johnson and Kyron Johnson. They're not even going to play that position if Hassan Reddick goes down. So those, I would add Dallas Goedert certainly, and I would also add on the defensive side, Hassan Reddick, where there just isn't much depth behind those two players.
Right. I think you answered your own question there. You're not going to get a replacement for Hassan Reddick because they're just going to eliminate it.
Yeah,
exactly. They're going to go back to their former defense more than anything else. So then I don't see that as a major drop-off. It's just a major change. Dallas Goedert's a drop-off. If Dallas Goedert goes down, I saw Calcaterra play a handful of games at Oklahoma. I saw none of his games last year. The scouting reports were that he was a very good pass-catching tight end before he suffered X amount of concussions and decided to drop off of football, move away from football, and then decided to come back and play. I'll judge for myself. You'll judge for me when you're at practice on how good this kid can be, but he's a question mark. You do not replace an all-pro level player with a question mark and not think there's going to be a drop-off. So if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm sorry, I'm not worried about fear of the big name, fear of, are we in it? Are we a true contender? Are we a rebuilding team? What are we? No, you need an upgrade at the position. And if a guy's still unsigned at this stage of the year, nobody's commanding a multi-year deal. You're going to be able to get a decent team-friendly deal done with a guy. I would look for the Eagles to add another upgrade at the tight end position before we get too far into camp. All right, we haven't gotten too far into the show, 20 minutes to be exact, but that's the time we take our first break and bring in our first guest. Joining us next here on Birds 365 is Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal. He's next here on Birds 365.
Go for the polls. and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Hey, Football Friday here on Birds 365. Mac, and Frank. Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal jumping aboard with us here. Martin, we got 11 days before camp opens up. What do you do with yourself just before you know you got to go to work basically every day for 8 months? That slight downtime is dwindling and dripping away. What are you getting in before you got to go back to work?
Well, it's funny you should ask me that, Jody, because I remember you guys probably know Bob Brookover. He used to cover the Phillies for many years. And he said he used to get ready for spring training by going to a fitness center, standing in the middle of the fitness center for like 2 hours, just standing there and then talking to people as they went along. So I'm going to stand outside. You got to get ready for the weather, obviously. So I'm going to stand outside my driveway for 2 hours straight, just kind of standing around in the hot sun, getting ready and stuff. So I'll be ready for that.
Make sure you don't talk to anybody. Just stand out there for 2 hours, Martin, and then start talking to people. Because you got it. Hey, practice makes perfect. The Eagles don't understand that, but we understand it. We got to get ready for this thing. We got to. Jody just depressed me, by the way, Martin. We got to get ready for this grind coming up. Although who knows? The Eagles, I joke, let's get those. Let's get moving, Philadelphia Eagles, with those credential requests. But Martin, you are counting down. This is the season of list, as we say, and you are counting down your 9 most important Eagles as we lead up to camp. I can guess who number 1 is going to be. Obviously, you're not going to give it away, but What number? You're on 8, I believe, and that
8,
was
yeah, today.
we were just talking about Hassan Reddick.
Mhm.
You know, it's interesting, Hassan, because they don't have much depth behind them. But as I kind of mentioned to Jody, and I don't know if you heard when you're in the green room, if they lost a player like him, they're just going to change their entire defense. They're not going to use that player. So that makes them pretty stinking important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting because last year, they wanted to play that way, but they didn't have Hassan Reddick. I mean, they had Jannard Avery. And so when you look at, Hassan Reddick compared to Jannard Avery, I mean, that's a massive upgrade and everything. And that kind of gives them flexibility now to actually play the kind of style that Jonathan Gannon wants to play and do it effectively. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's had 23.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons. So, they have now that flexibility to have a guy, from that linebacker position who can rush the passer, to go along with the 4 guys on the defensive line. So that makes them much stronger, but like you said, if Hassan Reddick were to get hurt and miss significant time, then they're back to where they were technically last year with Jannard Avery, even though Jannard Avery isn't there, but similar type of guys, unproven and not nearly as good as Hassan Reddick. So yeah, he's a very important part of that defense, going into this season.
Let me follow up with you with the other thing I hit with John in the first segment of the show today. If Dallas Goedert goes down, the Eagles are in a whole hell of a lot of trouble.
Right.
Would you think the Eagles will just go with what they have on the roster now? Some guys who have either limitations, who have no idea as rookies, or do you think Howie Roseman is contemplating, maybe even talking to some free agent tight ends, and he will bring someone in maybe before camp starts or just as camp starts? Or do you think they just roll the dice and go, hey, we'll play this by year as we go. We'll keep an eye on everything, including the waiver wire, but we know at some point we're probably going to add a tight end. How do you think the Eagles right now look at their backup tight end position?
Well, I think it's a situation where they want to play more, 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers. So, I mean, if Dallas Goedert were to be out for maybe a game or 2, I think obviously they would get by with what they have. If it's more long-term, I mean, there's always Richard Rodgers, as a veteran guy. I mean, is he still on the
he's still here.
90-man roster.
So, 90. Yep.
You got a veteran guy there. Jack Stoll, I mean, he was okay last year. They like, Calcaterra and everything. So, maybe you roll the dice, if it's not a long-term type of injury, you obviously going to emphasize the 11 personnel a lot more. You go with, they're going to do that anyway. I mean, Dallas Goedert is obviously a big part of the passing offense and everything like that. But once, I think like they could get by short term if he were to have it, suffer an injury and everything like that. If it's more like a long-term season-ending type of deal, then yeah, they would probably look at the waiver wire and try to make a trade before, the end of October deadline, and address it that way. But I think if it were a short-term type of deal, I think they would get by without Goddard going more 11 personnel, which they're going to do anyway. So
yeah, and Tyree Jackson as well. He's going to start on the PUP list, but he got hurt. I think that game was January 8th, week 18. So 9-month injury. It's basically September 8th, 3 days before the start of the regular season. He could be in the mix relatively early in the regular season. So just put Tyree Jackson in the back of your mind as well, because the Eagles still really like him as a prospect as well. But I want to shift towards the expectations of this team, Martin, and how that can weigh both positively and negatively on a team with a young coaching staff, a young head coach entering his second year, and a young quarterback, third year, but second year as a starter. I think we all know Jalen Hurts' mentality, his work ethic. He tends to be very capable of drowning out the rat poison, as he likes to call it. But how do you think expectations you've been around numerous teams over the year. Can that go in a positive direction, negative direction, or do we make too much out of that?
I think it can go in a positive direction. Like, you look at the composition of the team, you got, like, your veteran guys like Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. All these guys have been around. They've been on teams that have gotten off to bad starts and totally fallen apart. So they're kind of like a guiding light, so to speak. They're not going to let, like, let's say if the Eagles get off to a slow start, like, they lose that opener in Detroit, which would obviously be a travesty. And, everybody would think like the sky is falling and stuff. But, they're the kind of guys who would be able to rally the team around them and stuff like that. I mean, Nick Sirianni obviously only going into his second year as a head coach. I mean, even last year, he wasn't the kind of, when they got off to that 2-5 start, he wasn't the kind of guy who was going to panic and say, "Oh my God, what are we doing? What are we doing?" and stuff. In fact, he went to the flower pot analogy, and they turned it around. I mean, he showed that he's able to adjust to some extent, to overcome a slow start. So I think, with the veterans they have on the team, the fact they went through it last year and didn't fall apart. I mean, it seemed like it was getting pretty close at times, especially after that Las Vegas game in Las Vegas, where like Fletcher Cox was pretty much trashing Jonathan Gannon and his defense. And, you kind of thought, oh, this is where it's going to fall apart, and it didn't. So they've kind of already been through it before, even though they're young. They rallied around Jalen Hurts. They rallied around the veterans, and, they switched to the run-based offense and everything like that. So I think they would be able to handle the expectations. I don't think they're going to get too carried away by everyone saying, oh, the NFC East is wide open. It's there for the Eagles to take and everything. I think they know they're a good team, and I think they're going to have to, deal with the expectations. And I think they've proven that they can. So, I don't think it'll be a major factor for them.
All right, Martin, put Eagle Nation aside for a second. I only want Martin Frank's opinion. What is your confidence level in Shane Steichen as the full-time, until otherwise told, every down play caller for the Philadelphia Eagles? You guys got a chance to talk to him basically every week, right? You got both of the coordinators every single week during the season.
Yep.
And the whole second half of the season, maybe more than that, Steichen was calling plays. He wasn't telling you guys he was calling all the plays.
Right.
Kind of came as a surprise to all of us when Doug unearthed that during the offseason. But we know that's going to be the case going into the season. What's your confidence level in Shane Steichen, Eagle play caller?
I would say on a scale from like 1 to 10, I'd give it like a 7. I think, he knows how to call an offense based on what he and Nick Sirianni want. I mean, I don't think he's going to go rogue or anything like that and call like 30 pass plays in a row, have Jalen Hurts throw deep every time. I mean, he's going to do it within the scale of what he and Nick Sirianni, want out of the offense. Like, if it means, maybe here and there you take a gamble and stuff, like, I think that's okay. He's proven that he can call an offense before. I mean, he was there in with the Chargers with Justin Herbert, calling the plays, and, that was Herbert's rookie year and stuff. So he did pretty well. So, I think he's got, the knowledge, the basic fundamentals as far as being able to call an offense and stuff like that. So I don't really worry too much about it. I think if he were to like start like doing something out of the ordinary or something like that's totally against what Nick Sirianni's doing, like Sirianni get on the headset and say, Shane, we're calling this, stop, maybe turn off his head.
Shane's going rogue. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Which is why, Martin, the bigger part of that to me is not the play calling. I think that's overrated anyway. That's about preparation during the week. But You don't typically do this as a young coach. You're brought in as the offensive guy, and remember at the time, um, they were kicking Doug in the butt out the door. The offense isn't inventive enough, and it's got to get more creative, and all the nonsense you hear all over the rest of the NFL as well. It's not unique to Philadelphia, but he's brought in as the young offensive whiz kid, and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And all of a sudden he says, you know what? And he, by the way, he's right, but he says, this is a big freaking job. I got other stuff I got to do. And I'm this close to Shane Steichen and Kevin Patullo. They can handle that part of it, and I can concentrate on the larger job. I think it's great. Jody knows that. I think it's phenomenal. Yeah. But you don't see that with young coaches unless it's taken away from them, which there's no evidence that's been the case in Philadelphia. Do you look at it as a positive that Nick Sirianni was willing to do that and wasn't worried about his ego and saying, I got to call the plays. I got to have it.
Yeah, actually, I find it kind of refreshing because, I remember when Doug Peterson took over, that was like one of the first questions he was asked, like, who's going to run the offense? And he's like, I am, even though he just hired Frank Reich, Frank Reich's been around the block a few times. He knows what he's doing. And, it was the same way when Chip Kelly was here, it was Chip Kelly's offense. He was going to call all the plays and everything like that, so I don't understand. I just never really understood why like a head coach felt compelled to also be the play caller and everything. I know it's his team and ultimately his responsibility and everything like that, but like when you're a head coach, that's a lot. I mean, you've got to be basically the CEO. You've got to be the guy who like runs the entire team, and then you're also calling the plays on offense. I mean, it just seemed like a lot, and that's why you have an offensive coordinator. I mean, that's the job of the offensive coordinator, to run the offense. So yes, obviously during the week, like you mentioned, the preparation is key. And, there's nothing to suggest that Sirianni doesn't have a big hand in that offense and what they're going to call during the game. So it's, Monday to Saturday, Sirianni has his hand in everything, and he knows exactly what kind of plays are going to be called on Sunday. Now, the actual plays themselves, that's probably up to Shane Steichen, but that's in the framework of what they prepared for from Monday to Saturday. So, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised more head coaches aren't, I'm surprised so many head coaches are also calling the plays on offense. I mean, I just think that's a lot of work to do.
There's just some of them that it's in their blood. And you mentioned one, Martin, and that was Doug Peterson. Doug took pride in the fact that he was calling every single play. He didn't want to give up that responsibility. Yeah. He had no desire to be a CEO coach, and he did win a Super Bowl. So you can't knock him for it. All right, I want to jump to the other coordinator, the other side of the ball. And that, of course, is Jonathan Gannon. The Eagles upgraded the pieces that Gannon has to work with when things weren't at their best. And he had a good season. I don't want to knock his overall season, but there were games where he got called on the carpet pretty good. A lot of us said, yeah, but he didn't have everything. He has a system. He knows what he wants to do. They just didn't have the talent to be able to pull off what Jonathan Gannon wanted. Well, he's not going to get that break this year because they've upgraded the talent, got him a big DT to play in the middle of the line, got him a pass rushing edge guy, got him an upgrade at the other corner, of course, from Darius Slay. How much pressure would you say is on Jonathan Gannon coming into the year?
Well, I mean, a lot. I mean, all the things you mentioned about last year are absolutely right. And yet he was still a finalist for one or two head coaching jobs. So, I mean, people obviously bought the fact that, hey, he's got a pretty good defensive scheme. He just didn't have the guys to execute it as much last season. Well, now he has the guys. I mean, like you mentioned, you got James Bradbury, you got Slay, they brought in two linebackers, if you count Kaiser White and also Nakobe Dean, three down linebackers basically who have speed, who can kind of cover and rush the passer and stuff like that. You upgraded the defensive line. You added Hassan Reddick. You drafted Jordan Davis in the first round to go with Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave. So, there's no reason why the Eagles shouldn't have a good defense this year. And obviously that will reflect positively on Jonathan Gannon if they do. I mean, this is probably going to be his last year here as a defensive coordinator, because obviously if the Eagles do well, he's going to be a head coach next year. And, if they don't do well, he might be coaching somewhere else, maybe a linebacker coach or something like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Jonathan Gannon, and the Eagles pretty much, it's kind of like the same thing on offense with Jalen Hurts. The Eagles went out and improved the offense around him. So they basically saying, Jalen, this is your team. If you can't make it happen, then we got to find a new quarterback. And it's the same thing on defense with Gannon. It's like, you want to play this defensive style where we got you the guys who can do it. So it's on you now to make sure it happens.
I'd expand that to the whole coaching staff, Martin, because, and I've been talking about this, it's very rare where you bring an entire coaching staff back, the exact same coaching staff. Either, fire some guys or guys get promoted. And we know the history with Jeffrey Lurie recently. And then I go back to those expectations. So this year you're saying to yourself, well, if the Eagles live up to their expectations and they're a really good team, as you mentioned, Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen even might get promotions elsewhere and be out of here. If they don't live up to those expectations, we need a Mike Rowe or Carson Walsh, Martin. Somebody's got to pay for that in Jeffrey Lurie's mind. So this is kind of it for this particular band getting back together. How important is that continuity on the whole coaching staff for the Eagles?
Oh, it's very important. I mean, everybody coming back this year knows exactly what's expected. I mean, what Shane Steichen's about on offense. Everybody coming back knows all about that. I mean, you have a few new players who have to, work into the system, obviously AJ Brown, but pretty much the entire offense is intact. And defense, it's the same way. I mean, everybody, Fletcher Cox knows what Jonathan Gannon's defense is. I mean, he's going to have to play screens. He knows that now. I mean, there's no ambiguity anymore with that. I mean, and if he doesn't, well, they drafted Jordan Davis in the first round and he plays screens. So, there you go. He'll lose playing time. Hargrave made the Pro Bowl last year under Gannon. So he knows all about what Gannon's, he obviously works well in Gannon's system. You got your defensive ends, they rush the passer. They're not playing the wide nine that they did under Schwartz. They know that now. They have to read and react. And, it's the same way in the secondary. I mean, Darius Slay, Pro Bowl player, had a great year last year. They had Bradbury, so now he's got better help. I mean, Steven Nelson was good last year, but, Bradbury's probably a step above that. So, yeah, there are no surprises. Everybody knows what's expected of them. And there's no excuse for them not to be ready to take that next step and everything like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's great to have that coaching continuity. I mean, it also speaks to the fact that, only Gannon really last year was in demand, and even that was kind of tepid. I mean, nobody was.
Well, I don't know. 3 interviews is pretty stinking good.
Yeah,
he was a finalist.
Nobody was clamoring for Shane Steichen or anything like that.
Kevin Patullo got an interview.
Yeah,
I think, and Brian Johnson got an interview in Green Bay.
And these are all young guys, so obviously they want to, at some point, I'm sure head coaching is probably something they want to strive for and everything. So yeah, if they have a good year, those guys are going to get head coaching opportunities next season or the season after or whatever. But, so it helps the Eagles in the short term. In the long term, those guys will probably be gone if they're good. And if they're not, then they might be gone anyway.
I want to ask you about a couple of Eagle draft picks mid-round from just 2 years ago and who you think has the better chance of doing some significant contributing for the Eagles this year. And I refer to assuming health with both players. And I know it's probably a little bit of a stretch with each of these 2 players, but Davion Taylor and Kayvon Wallace, 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, 2020. Both the times have flashed, but then taken step backwards and or gotten hurt. Eagles have kind of made advances at both of their positions, which have pushed them into the background. So they're going to have to really flash to get into the mix to play this year. Give me your breakdowns on whether either one of those two can actually make contributions for the Eagles this year.
I think that's a great question, actually, because I think the Eagles kind of answered it to some regard, especially at linebacker. I mean, Davion Taylor was a 3rd-round pick in 2020, like you mentioned, and they went out and signed Kaiser White for a year. They went out and drafted Nakobe Dean, in the 3rd round this past year, and he's, everyone's talking about him as being like a starter and all that. So I think that kind of pushes Davion Taylor back. I mean, we saw him play, he kind of came on the second, at the midway point last season. I think the Lions game is when he kind of got his chance, but then he got hurt, a knee injury, which turned out to, require surgery and stuff like that. So I just don't think he's really in their plans that much anymore. I mean, he's going to have to show something that he has not shown yet. I mean, that's the kind of thing, like when they drafted him, he had the end-to-end speed to be one of those linebackers who could play every down, but he was also relatively new to the game of football because he barely played in high school because of religious reasons and stuff. So he had a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of intelligence, I guess, that he had to acquire in order to play that position. And I think they're starting to run out of patience. I mean, I think this is kind of like a wake-up call, a last chance for him because, on the one hand, Kaiser White is only signed to a 1-year deal. So, Davion Taylor still kind of has a chance to earn a role and stuff, but it might not be this year. And as for Kayvon Wallace, I mean, I think it's a similar type of deal, although I think his chances are a little bit better because, the two safeties, two veteran safeties, Jaquizy Tart and Anthony Harris are on 1-year deals. So
Marcus Epps is on a contract here as well. So
exactly. So yeah, right. Epps too. Epps is still kind of a young guy though. So if they wanted to keep him long term, they could probably do it pretty easily. So, there's still a chance for Kayvon Wallace, but I mean, they kind of made it clear that this year might not be that chance. I mean, I think they still like him and everything. I think he's got a better shot than Davion Taylor as far as sticking here long term.
All right, last one for me, Martin. Follow Martin online at mfranknfl on Twitter. Read him, DelawareOnline.com. His top 9 most important Eagles as he counts down his time to sitting around for, it's only going to be an hour, Martin. That's also a positive, not 2 hours. You only got to sit around an hour before you talk to people in the heat with Nick Sirianni. So that's part's positive. But you kind of mentioned a little bit in Jody's question with Davion Taylor, Wallace. We mentioned it with Epps. Last year, the Eagles targeted their 2018 draft class for extensions. Jordan Mailata, Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, Dallas Goedert. They don't have to worry about it with the 2019 class because it's Andre Dillard. They declined the 5th-year option. We all know he's probably going to be gone after this season. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, we all know what's going on there. I forget who else is. Miles Sanders, they're not going to extend him yet. We'll see how that. And that's my question. Who is Howie Roseman going to target to get extended early? There's a number of options. I mentioned Marcus Epps, T.J. Edwards. They have a lot of 1-year players. They could go the Tim Jernigan route. Remember when they signed Tim Jernigan for 1 year and they just said, hey, he's pretty good. Let's extend him. They could do that with Bradbury and Kaiser White and a number of those Band-Aid players they brought in. You have Javon Hargrave. You have Miles Sanders. Who is Howie Roseman going to target? That's the way he does business, to extend them early to maybe get a little bit of a cost-effective end game.
Well, I think you would have to look on the offensive lines. Offensive line, I mean, a guy like Jack Driscoll, I think, if they, obviously going into this season, you got a pretty good competition at right guard with Isaac Seumalo and Driscoll and also Cam Jurgens, I guess, who they drafted in the 2nd round. But if you see Driscoll as being like a future starter at right guard, I mean, maybe this is Isaac's last year, and maybe you try to lock up Driscoll.
They got to wait on Driscoll though. He's in Jalen's class, so that's why I didn't bring up Jalen. They have to wait on those guys till after the season.
Oh, okay,
like,
right. 2019.
Yeah. So the 1 year deal, guys. Javon Hargrave is on the final year of his deal. Miles is eligible, but we know how they feel about running back or nobody. Maybe they say, you know what, we had a good 2018 class. That's why we extended guys. We didn't have a good 2019 class.
No, it's I mean, the 2019 class, it was pretty bad. But as far as Hargrave's concerned, like, it's going to cost a lot if they want to like extend him, and they just drafted.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because he's a good player.
That's a really interesting one because you also have Fletcher Cox, and you're probably this is probably the last year for him. You do have Jordan Davis. You do have a couple like young guys and stuff
Milton
like that.
Williams. People forget about Milton
Williams. Exactly. So you might not like want to break the bank for a guy like Hargrave. You might actually use that money instead of paying Hargrave is, going after another free agent, defensive tackle in the offseason and everything like that. I mean, someone who's younger than Hargrave, because I believe he's going to be 30.
He's going to be 30. So, he's a tough decision, Javon.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see a scenario where neither Hargrave nor Fletcher Cox come back next year. And you go with the two young guys. Maybe you sign a younger defensive tackle as a free agent. Miles Sanders, I don't think they're going to offer him an extension. I mean, I just don't see it with the running back. I mean, unless it's like a team-friendly deal, and I get the sense that Miles Sanders probably won't want a team-friendly deal when you can test free agency, and if he has a big year, somebody might pay him. But I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of like anybody who might, maybe
I think it's Epsy.
Maybe Epsy.
So do I.
Yeah.
You're not gonna. I'm sure. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm sure, but I would say the chances are that neither of the two veteran guys are going to be coming back, Anthony Harris or Tart. So, maybe you got to sign Epps, but I don't think that's going to be like a
no,
major, huge contract deal. But I can't really think of anybody else.
All right, Martin, last one for me, and I'm going to circle it back around to the quarterback. Camp opens up in 11 days, and the spotlight will get bigger on Jalen Hurts. It's been there all off season, but when he's actually out there on the field, it's only going to get brighter. Is there something Jalen can do, say, someone around Jalen can do or say that will help to build your confidence as an Eagle reporter? All right, understood the Eagles already committed to it. It's not going to be a change, but this has got a chance to work this year. The Eagles' investment in Jalen Hurts by not going out and getting another quarterback is going to pay dividends. What can Jalen Hurts do, if anything, to make Martin Frank more confident that, all right, the Eagles have their quarterback?
Well, I would think keeping his best friend, A.J. Brown, happy. I mean, if A.J. Brown is not happy with the way Jalen Hurts is playing, doesn't feel he's getting the ball enough, or Jalen Hurts is missing him when he's open, then A.J. Brown is not going to be Jalen Hurts' best friend anymore. And A.J. Brown has a nice 4-year extension worth $100 million. So A.J. Brown won't be the one leaving. That's going to be my biggest tell sign. I mean, Devontae Smith to an extent as well. We saw a couple times, especially at the end of that Giants game, where he stormed off the field because he felt he should have gotten the ball and everything. But, those two guys are pretty much going to determine how Jalen Hurts does this year and whether he's back next year. If those guys have a good season, and it's not even like each of them has to have 1,000 yards receiving, but, if they're a big part of the offense, if they're making plays and Hurts is getting them the ball on time and where it needs to be, then everyone's going to be happy, and Hurts could be the guy going forward beyond this year. And, if there's more scenes where Devontae Smith is storming off the field, or AJ Brown is wondering why he ever became friends with Jalen Hurts in the first place, then you got problems, you know? So I think that will be the biggest signal as to whether Jalen Hurts' future is with the Eagles or not.
Read him at the Delaware News Journal. He, like everybody else, got a good list going this week leading up to the beginning of camp. Do feel free to check it out. We always appreciate when Martin Frank hops aboard with us. MF, go hit the driveway, buddy. Get some sun in there. Get that full hour and you better be ready.
I gotta wait till it gets a little hotter, you know, better simulate, you know, the heat of the day and stuff. And actually I might cut it down to like an hour and a half because of Nick Sirianni practices and stuff.
That's very true. Yeah. When I say, well, you probably only need to do 45 minutes. When you train for a marathon, you got to be able to run 13 miles, right? You got to do half. Once you get half in, so go out and do 45 minutes. You'll be a lock. You'll be ready for the first day. First day of grass time. Martin, a pleasure. Always. Thanks,
all right,
buddy.
Thanks. Yeah, look forward to it again.
Thanks, Frank, Delaware News Journal here with us. I'm Birds 365. You going to go out and spend 45 minutes in the sun today?
Oh, I do. You know, Martin's in great shape. He actually runs marathons. I got to get ready for this stuff. I try to take a 30 to 45 minute walk every day to gear up for training camp. That's how I gear up.
Get out and get some walking in. We'll come back, take some steps, continue to talk about the Eagles a little bit later in the show, about less than half an hour from now. Barrett Brooks, our bud from Sports Take and NBC Sports Philly, is going to jump aboard with us here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
You got the Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen here with you on Birds 365. We'll get Barrett Brooks up here in about 20 minutes from now. the sports take here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel and also NBC Sports Philly, which you get to see Barrett every single day. They got him standing up. We got him sitting down. Barrett's a big boy. Damn.
Yeah.
And maybe it's when he's with Amy Fadul, because Amy's not near as tall. The other sports net anchor, the girl does hockey. I'm completely blanking out.
I am completely blanking out because I can't watch much TV, Jody, and I'm certainly not watching Flyer stuff. So
really,
yeah.
You don't watch NBC Sports Philly much?
Well, I like Barrett personally. I like Dave, but normally I don't have time. I like Rube. I like everybody there, but I just, and also when it comes to the Eagles, I don't like watching other people's stuff or reading other people's stuff because I don't want it clouded.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah. That's so I don't watch a lot of it. No.
Yeah, people used to get mad when I would mention that on the air, that I only listen sporadically to other shows on the channels that I work on. And well, how do you not? I said, well, because I don't want to be accused of stealing other people's ideas. If my ideas happen to match up with another person's ideas, it's just because we think alike and it's a coincidence. It's not like, oh, I got to hear what he says so I can say the same exact thing. I never wanted to be accused of that, and I didn't want to have my thinking influenced by it. So I just drop in from time to time. I don't spend hours listening to my same show. So I know exactly where you're coming from, that you don't want to overdo other people's takes on the Birds when you want to keep your ideas separate and the same. All right, here's an idea that I know is going to get me in trouble with the Eagle fans. I saw your Sports Illustrated list. You're counting up or counting down, depending on how you look at it. Best football players on the Philadelphia Eagles. You had Goddard at number 5, which we both agreed in the first segment of today's show. If he goes down, Eagles are in trouble. At number 4, you had Jordan Mailata. Johnny Mack. We had started Birds 365 at this time last year. It was July, and the Eagles were getting set to report to camp. And Jordan Mailata was the backup to Dillard at left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people have probably forgotten that we knew it was going to be a competition for the position, but you said, and you were right, as per what they did at practice, oh, Dillard is going to get the first shot.
Yeah.
Dillard
that's why he was number 1, actually. Dillard.
Right.
Yeah.
The depth chart listing, however you want to decide it. Dillard was in that position as starting left tackle, and it was going to have to be taken from him. And it was. And it was obvious. And it was blatant. And Mailata stepped in and said, damn, this guy's good and this guy's ready. Now he's a contract extended millionaire who's hopefully going to be at left tackle for the Eagles for years. It just did a great job last year. There's no chance that was a flash in the pan, was there?
I don't think so. I don't. It is an amazing story, and I don't think people realize just how amazing. I say it all the time. The first time I met Jordan Mailata, he didn't know how to put on a football helmet. I mean, he was at ground zero. He didn't know anything about the sport. They just saw this guy, and he said, "Wow, he's 6'8". He moves like he's 360 pounds. He's 380 now, but he moves like he's 295 pounds. He's just incredibly strong. He had all the traits to be a dominant player, but didn't know how to play the game. Didn't have any technique, no fundamentals, and a lot of that Jeff Stoutland has looked at it as like, and he's explained this to me. He didn't have to break any bad habits, so in a lot of ways, it was a positive. He could teach him from the ground up and literally teach him everything, because it's very difficult to break bad habits. But as good as Jeff Stoutland is, Jody, and I say that, and it was the San Francisco game in 2020. The Eagles didn't want to play Jordan Mailata. They had a bunch of injuries. They had no stinking idea. They had no idea. In fact, before he got on the field, I would say they were closer to giving up than thinking he was going to be a star. And I don't think people realize this. And they had to throw him into the deep end of the pool. Had to. And Jeff Stoutland didn't know. And you actually used the term, I hope he's ready, but I don't know. And they threw him out there in the deep end of the pool, and he held up, and he held up, and he held up, and he kept getting better and better and better. And all the traits developed to the point where he's just bigger than everybody. He's more athletic. He's stronger. And now he's got, and the scary part of Jordan Mailata is he's still got room to improve, because the technique, especially he is phenomenal as a run blocker. I mean, he goes straight ahead. It's just, hey, bigger, stronger guy. And he understands leverage now, understands technique, but he's still got a lot of room to improve as a pass protector, especially against guys who are really, really quick. Those are the guys that he tends to struggle a little bit with. So he's got plenty of room to improve, and he's already one of the best left tackles in football. Arguably, the only one better is Trent Williams, who is a no doubt about it first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest left tackles of all time type of player. That's it, man. Everybody, you can say Tyron Smith if he's healthy, blah, blah, blah. It is amazing. And if I go back to that San Francisco game, and they were closer to giving up on Jordan Mailata. And if those injuries didn't happen and they weren't forced to put him on the field, he would have never gotten on the field. It's an amazing story.
It is. And that's why, and I'm not suggesting this is the way I think or this is the way I feel. I'm just pointing out that it's very infrequent that a guy who wasn't the highly thought of draft pick, 7th rounder, wasn't a guy who sat on the bench for years before he ever got a chance to play. To have a guy like that jump in and go from backup to start the preseason to not only win the starting job, but become, as John McMullen just painted him, maybe the second best left tackle in all of football, that doesn't happen. This is so much the exception, not the rule. That's why I feel the need to ask the question, and I'll answer it myself. I don't think it's going to happen, but you can't say it's impossible that maybe things just came together perfectly for Jordan Mailata, and the norm should more rear its ugly head this year, that Jordan Mailata could actually take a step backwards.
Well, I mean, step backwards, major step backwards, I think, no. Could he take a step backward? Yeah. I mean, who knows? And I asked Jordan this in the offseason, all of it, now he's got $64 million in the bank. Now he's, on The Masked Singer. He's got everybody's telling him how great he is. And he mentioned, the good thing about that is Jeff Stoutland has been on him from day one. And he tells him no matter when he was a rookie who didn't know anything, he would criticize him to what. Now that he's a star player, he does the same thing, and that helps him. There's always a chance of hiccups, and maybe it's not as good as it was last year, but I don't think you're going to see a big drop off. Maybe he's a top 5 left tackle instead of number 2 to Trent Williams. Maybe he's not quite as good or quite as dominant, but he's going to be really good. He's too physically gifted. All the questions with Jordan Mailata had to do with the other stuff, the technique, the fundamentals, and Stoutland said that also the mental toughness. He didn't grow up with football. He didn't have Pop Warner. You got to be tough to play football. You could be as big and as strong, but you got to be tough. And he's proven to be he's very tough as well. So all those intangibles the Eagles knew nothing about, plus the technique and the fundamentals, he's risen those to a level that you say, all right, those are good. And then you knew he had the physical gifts. I mean, he's just bigger and stronger than everybody else. I mean, this is a league built on big, strong guys, and he's the biggest and strongest one of them all, literally.
Very true. And the other thing he's got going for him is, and cross your fingers it stays that way, he hadn't gotten hurt. Now, I know he didn't play all those first couple seasons in the league. If he got hurt sitting on a bench, shame on him. But when he was
did, Jody. That is my one concern. He did get hurt. He's had back problems. They shut him down at one point. Remember, they kept Jordan on the 53 a lot in the first 2 seasons, even though he wasn't going to play because they were concerned about leaving him. And guys like Ross Tucker, our buddy, and Baldy would always pump him up and say how physically gifted he was. And the Eagles were worried about getting him through the waiver wire. So they weren't going to mess with the practice squad. That's my one concern. And I don't know if I've said that a couple times. He is a 6'8", 380-pound guy who's had back problems. That is my one concern, because back problems can bleep you up. Remember Sean Andrews back in the day. Sean Andrews was a great player, and all of a sudden he started having back problems. That's my one concern, because he's such a big guy, and he's in tremendous shape for being a big guy. He's not fat or anything of that nature. It's kind of amazing how he carries that weight on his frame, because he's just so immense. But that always concerns me. And he has had some back issues, and that's something you gotta at least throw into the hopper, so to speak.
Right, but last year was the first year that he played significantly, correct?
Yeah. Well,
he
played at the end of 2020. No, he got hurt. He missed 3 games, I think 2 games with a knee injury, Jordan.
Last year?
Yeah, that was when.
What 2 games was he out for?
I don't have it in front of me. I'll look it up. He remember they had to move. Lane left, and they had to play. They had to do that shuffling, and then he got hurt, and Andre Dillard came in, and you had Driscoll moving outside. They had a lot of shuffling chairs. I think he missed 2 games, but I'll look it up.
Okay, shame on me. I should have remembered that, but I don't off the top of my head. I thought he played in all 17 games last year. He might miss some time, gotten taken out of a game, but you're telling me he missed 2 full games. I should have remembered that.
He got hurt in practice. It just got rolled up on. Wasn't serious, but he missed, But I'm trying to look it up. 14. So he missed 3 games. But the last game, week 18, doesn't count.
Oh, so the JV game doesn't count. Yeah. No.
And he played. He started. People forget he started 10 games in 2020. After all he started, and it
was it 10. I didn't think it was that many.
Yeah, it was 10. 10 in 2020. Started 14 last year. 2020 is when it all started in that San Francisco game. And then he just took off last season. He was just tremendous. And by the way, because he came in as that 7th round pick, and we talked about it last year when Lane had his issues, he's like, I'll move to right tackle. Like, even though he's one of the best left tackles in football, even though if he did go to free agency, he would have gotten paid really big, but the Eagles got a big break by getting them done early. Even though it doesn't seem to register to him. He's like, yeah, I'll go play right tackle and let Andre play left tackle. Where he could say, you know what? He could do Jason Peters at this point. Said, no, I want to stay at left tackle. But he's got this personality where it's like, I'll do whatever you want me to do, which, is also phenomenal. Part of his sort of personality.
Do you think that comes from the fact that he played a different sport as a kid, that lent itself to more one and for all or all for one, that some of the kids that come through the Pop Warner into high school, into college, are more personally driven so that they can make it to the big show someday? That wasn't Jordan Mailata's goal. Most players who make it to the NFL start dreaming about being an NFL player when they're 7 or 8, and they get so motivated to do it for the next 13 years. Jordan Mailata wasn't even thinking about the NFL until basically he got into the NFL. Do you think that has anything to do with why his attitude is as good as it is?
I think it has to do with most of those players you're talking about, maybe not early people that hope, but who have a dream of playing in the NFL, they're pretty good, by the time they hit high school, never mind college. And, they get a lot of accolades and they get a lot of people telling them how great they are. Jordan never had any of that stuff. So I don't think he developed that star mentality of I'm this and I'm that. And he still will do, if you told him to play center, he'd go play center, even though he's one of those best left tackles in football. And that's one of the things I said, is that going to change with the money, with the Masked Singer, with everybody telling him how great he is? Doesn't seem like it's going to change. I mean, he's a really well-grounded guy. And I think it's just because how he came up as a player. He was an afterthought. He was a true developmental prospect. And nobody thought he'd develop. They took a flyer. And they had the best offensive line coach in the league, and even he didn't know. They threw him in the deep end of the pool, and they were probably surprised when the head came up and he started swimming. They probably thought he was going to drown, to be honest.
And he is still only 25 years of age, which means the Eagles can put him at that left tackle position and, health permitting, leave him there and not have to sweat him for the next several years. I need Johnny Mac. I'm Jody Mac. That makes this Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. We're going to stay in a JAKIB Sports way. Coming up next, I don't think he's been on with us for about a month because he launched a new show here on
JAKIB longer
Sports
than that. I don't think he's been on with us since the launch of Sports Take, but I could be wrong.
That's what I mean. Been a while since we've had Big Barrett on with us. Barrett Brooks going to join us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
John McMullen, Jody McDonald, back here with you on Bird 365, waiting on Barrett Brooks. He should jump aboard at any minute. JM, I wanted to run this by you, and if we get Barrett to comment on it too, we will. Don't know if you saw this story. I think it moved last night. Two big NFL, college, getting ready for pro all-star games are certainly the granddaddy of them all, not the Rose Bowl, the Senior Bowl, and the Shrine Game, which always comes in second to the Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl gets much more acclaim and credit and coverage and everything else. The Shrine happens earlier, doesn't get as much publicity, and doesn't usually get as big names as the Senior Bowl does. Yesterday, the NFL announced that they're going to send NFL coaches to coach the Shrine Bowl this year, not the Senior Bowl. Now, this is flying in the face of decades of tradition. NFL coaching staffs always went in and coached the Senior Bowl, usually the lower level teams that finished the previous season and would be picking high in the draft. So they got a major leg up by being able to work hands-on and get an up-close and personal look at these kids. They're switching from coaching the Senior Bowl to the Shrine Bowl. You got any reason behind that or logic as to why the NFL would make a decision like that?
Yeah, they're involved with the game. They have a little bit more control. This was a concern dating back really a couple years. It seemed to be trending in this direction where they're going to try to make the Shrine Game into the Senior Bowl. Essentially, they're going to, because they have more control over it. And, you know, as you mentioned, from a tradition standpoint, I think it sucks. I think everybody enjoys the Senior Bowl. Anybody who's ever been down there scouting it. Jim Nagy kind of runs it now. Actually interviewed to be in the Eagles front office this offseason. Long-time scout, a lot of respect around the league. It's Bill Savage before that. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are happy, but essentially they're trying to turn the East-West Shrine Game into the Senior Bowl. They're trying to, with, you know, putting their weight behind it. It's now at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. You know, it's on the NFL Network. They're trying to turn that into the Senior Bowl, essentially.
And you think it has everything to do with control over the game, that the Senior Bowl didn't allow the NFL teams to do what they wanted to do?
Well, more, I would say, no, I don't think it's from that standpoint. I think it's more of control aspect of it. I think the Senior Bowl let them do whatever they wanted, but you know,
Well,
if they don't have complete control, if they don't have monetary control, if they don't have business control, if they don't have all of that.
So you're talking about money.
Yeah. I'm not talking about players or that aspect of it.
Wait, hold on. Can I just check something?
Yeah.
$11 billion. Is that what you quoted for me before the show started? $11 billion.
Yeah. Funny thing about
that's not enough. So they need to make that much more over the biggest postseason all-star game for college players. They need to grab a hold of that and say, we need to wring every dollar out of this as well. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Funny thing about rich people is they like more money. And, you know, I think it's more, you know, probably the control more than the money even. You know, they want to be in charge. And by the way, I as I said, this has been bubbling for a couple of years. I don't know when it was, probably 5-6 years ago. They you know, they started providing coaches that they switched the games to have NFL rules and things like that. And they were trying to sort of shape it in that way, but nobody would nobody would not take the invites from the Senior Bowl and go to the Shrine Bowl. The good players were still going to the Senior Bowl, and they couldn't stop it. It looks like they're trying to ramp up and stop it, try to change it to where essentially the two games change places and one becomes more important than the other. And the Senior Bowl is ultimately probably going to lose out if they press it to the point I think they're going to press it, to be honest.
So you think what do you think the Senior Bowl would do to try and challenge?
There's not much they can do. That's my point. I was going to
say,
other than
the NFL is doing this. You know why the NFL is doing this? Because they can.
Exactly.
They are the big dog in the fight. I get that. But the Senior Bowl just has to roll over and take it?
They don't have to, but, again, what do you do? They can go about things business as usual and see what happens. They can move the game. They can do things of that nature. They could try to keep it as 2 games, but I think they want this to be the game when it comes to that. And if you go on the NFL operations site, they have sort of a football ops site. The East-West Shrine Game's a part of it. They fully incorporated it to their business model, and they want it to be successful. So, they're going to do everything to make sure it's going to be successful.
And I'm not, hey, the NFL, there's a reason they're an $11 billion business, because they're that good. So I'm not denying the viability of the league, the number 1 sport in this country by far. But yeah, and I went once, 30 some odd years ago, to the Senior Bowl before I got into radio, when I was working for ESPN as an associate producer, and went down, and it was cool. It was this small little town, and not terribly small, but not a major metropolis, that came to life for this week. That it was the biggest event of the entire year there, to be able to hobnob and rub elbows with all the people from the NFL was just really cool. I guess it'll be the same thing at the Shrine Bowl. It'll just be relocated a little bit more under the NFL's thumb. But it just seems wrong, John.
Oh, I agree. The Senior Bowl, and not just because of tradition, but that's part of it. I don't think it's broken, so why fix it? Same thing with the Combine in Indianapolis, and it's going to continue at least for the short term in Indy. But nobody even in the industry wants it to change. But ultimately, that Combine is leaving. I don't know where. It might go to Los Angeles. They might turn it into the draft, where they give it to a different city every year. I don't know when, I don't know where, but it's leaving. They're turning it into more of a financial vehicle. Same thing with the draft. They did it with the draft. Radio City, I loved going to Radio City. And now it's, bebopping around the country, and they make money off it. This year was Las Vegas. They're going to do the same thing with the Shrine Bowl, ultimately, and that's what they're trying to do. And you mentioned the access. It probably will be less, Jody. They probably will. That's probably one of the reasons they want to cut it down, because the Senior Bowl is one of the last places where you can, go to and hobnob and talk to scouts. And even that has been curtailed in recent years. I haven't been there in about 5 years, but the way it used to be, already that's being curtailed. It's just where we are.
Yeah, it was 35 years ago that I went to the Senior Bowl. I was only in my 20s, as a matter of fact. Maybe that's why it was as cool as it was, because I was just getting into the business, and I recognized it. Look at this guy. Look at two guys talking, and you could have so much fun with it. I'm assuming it'll be the same, but lessened if they move it to the Shrine Bowl, which is unfortunate. I feel bad for Mobile, Alabama. All right, let's get back to talking Eagles. We haven't been able to round up Barrett Brooks. Hopefully we can punch him up before the show comes and goes. I want to ask you about a column done by our bud, Joe Santoliquito, about the fact that he tried to put a positive spin on the critique that came out last week via our bud D Gunn about Jalen Hurts. That D Gunn had a source that he trusted, giving him insight, giving him information on the Eagles and the way they feel right now about Jalen Hurts, and might not be as positive as some others here in the Delaware Valley, aka Eagle Nation, are feeling about Jalen Hurts. And Santoliquito's take was, couldn't happen to a better guy. That if there's anybody who can handle the slings and arrows, the questions and the critiques of Jalen Hurts, it's Jalen Hurts, because he's just that kind of a guy, that he has been able to put his, there he is.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Just when we're about to give him a hard time, Barrett Brooks shows up with us. BB, how you be?
Good. I was actually outside finishing up on putting my ribs in the smoker, man. So
there we go.
Fellas. My apologies, fellas. Getting ready for the weekend.
You got to get it done before camp,
man.
Before the grind starts, man.
What is it, a week and a half? You got to get it going.
Yeah, got to enjoy the last few minutes of peace. But we were talking about, obviously, you were in the middle of it, and D Gunn set up the firestorm of people questioning Jalen Hurts, and I think they got lost in the weeds a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think the important part of that sort of report, whatever you want to call it, from Derek Gunn was that the Eagles were uncomfortable with Jalen Hurts. And I just asked, well, why wouldn't they be uncomfortable? Why would they be comfortable with Jalen Hurts? And I think people missed the point of it and got sort of bogged down into the 10 plays discussed. What was your take on the whole kerfuffle?
With me, it has to be an understanding of everything is relevant. The relevant series that we're talking about may have just been a bad day, a bad practice,
exactly.
And that happens. I've had way more than my fair share of bad practice. In fact, there were a couple of times I thought Ray Rose was going to cut me. You know what I'm saying? In fact, I had a practice so bad that he sent me in. He said, son, just go in. Just go in the locker room. I'm like, whoa, I'm thinking I'm getting cut. So I actually, went in. I broke my thumb, and it was cold. It's week 13. I had hit the wall. I had played in 17 games. I started from as a rookie. I played in 17 games. The average college career is what? College season is 11, 12 games the most.
Mm-hmm.
I break my finger that day. They tape it up, and I'm still out there practicing anyways. My coach makes me mad. I'm pissed off at him. I start chasing him around because I just hit the mark. I just hit it. I was done. He sent me in. Get in. Brooks, get in. So I get into the locker room. I'm by myself. I start packing my stuff up. 30 minutes later, practice is over with. And then so I'm sitting there. I'm like, man. So I'm packing my stuff up here, and the veterans come in. Ooh, B Brooks, you gone, B Brooks. They killing me. Long story long, everybody goes to meetings. I'm still packing my stuff up. Ray Rose comes in. What are you doing? So I get cussed out again by Ray Rose about me not being in the meeting. I said, you just cut me. I didn't cut you. Go to meetings. Go to me. We'll talk about this later on. So, I went to meetings, that he didn't cut me. In fact, I ended up spending the night at the Veterans Stadium that night because I went in Ray Rose's office and we got to, sitting down. We talked, talk about what it is being in the NFL, and all that stuff. And you're going to have days like this. You're not going to be perfect all the time. You got to make sure you just give 100% effort. And, I questioned your effort right there. And I never should have questioned your effort. I never had to question your effort. And it pissed me off. And we got to drinking moonshine. Next thing you know.
Whoa.
So me and
Ray now Rose, I know why you spent the night in the office.
Right. So, I couldn't drive home. I was drunk. Couldn't drive home. So I spent the night there and, got up the next day and it was business as usual, man. But he woke me up, made me go get in the steam room and said, I better not have a practice like that again. And after that, I just understood from that point on that you just got to keep rocking and rolling, keep working hard, keep trying to get better. And that's what Jalen's going to do. I mean, if our expectations as a fan base is that we're going to get a Herbert or somebody like that to that caliber as a passer, we're not going to get that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely feasible to get somewhere close around a Dak Prescott, somewhere close around a guy that, that's very functional, winning type of attitude, and may not blow it up in the stat bar, in the stat line, but he can blow it up as far as wins in that win column. He can't have a perfect game, but he'll get close to just going out there and winning you a game when it's on the line. And I think that's his biggest attribute. He wants to win. He's going to do whatever it takes to win. If it's passing, he'll pass. If it's running, he'll run. He can do that. And I think that's his biggest attribute.
BB, when we talk about the quarterback position in the NFL, we know how important it is. We believe that the quarterback has to lift the team up. But every once in a while, it can go the other way, that a team that is so invested in their guy because they like him, because they feel him, because he is a guy who they want to play for and they want to go out and bust their hump for. We talk about a coach that way often, but it can also be the relationship between the rest of the team and the quarterback as well. We believe that Jalen Hurts has all those attributes here in Philadelphia. Can the team really lift him up?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll just go from personal experience. I always go by examples. During I was in the league, I won a Super Bowl for that very premise right there. It was Jerome Bettis' last year, and every man to a T decided we were going to win the Super Bowl after we got our butts licked by the Indianapolis Colts on a Monday night. From that point on, there was no way we would have been denied in winning the Super Bowl. Everybody wanted to make sure Jerome Bettis ended his career, a Hall of Fame career, with a Super Bowl ring, number one, but number two, being in his hometown of Detroit. So from that point on, we didn't win every game, but I tell you what, there was no way we weren't going to make it to the playoffs. We made it as a 6th seed, and we won the Super Bowl in spite of Ben Roethlisberger, who wasn't Big Ben then. He was still Ben Roethlisberger in his second year. So it can be done. It definitely can be done. And he just has that type of nature and leadership quality that this team can rally behind him and for the rest of his career, not just for this season, but for the rest of his career. He has that type of mantra about him. He's one of those guys that a likable guy that you'll go out and give your all for. And like I said, that's one of his biggest attributes.
And I think Jalen, he's very guarded, but from what we know of him, Barrett, he doesn't give a flying what about that kind of stuff. And by the way, I give Nick Saban a lot of credit for that, because you hear the same thing in New England with Mac Jones. Think about Miami, and Jody's a big Tua guy. Miami agreed to trade for Deshaun Watson. They agreed, and they said, clean up these civil suits, and we're getting you. And meanwhile, Stephen Ross is getting Tom Brady on his yacht, the two Michigan men, trying to figure out a way how they can get Tom Brady down there. And Tua knows all this, but people talk about him and his leadership as well. That Alabama mindset, I think Nick Saban does a tremendous job. Jalen calls it rat poison. Not only the negative stuff, but the positive stuff, the expectations. So many people have high expectations for the Eagles. That can affect players in the wrong way. Everybody patting you on the back, so to speak, telling you how great you are.
And you don't work hard. You're right.
He's so grounded, especially for a young man. How much do you think that helps him get through these question marks, whether it comes with a bad practice, a bad game? Because everybody's going to have a bad practice, a bad game.
You're right, man. Coach Saban has put guys in a position where they don't hear the noise. I mean, that's one thing about Jalen. He could care less about what I say, either one of you say, anybody says. He knows what he can do and what he can accomplish. And, he doesn't sugarcoat it. He understands what he has to work on. He's going to work on those things. And, as for, what we as the media say, because you have to be thick-skinned playing here in Philadelphia. You have to be thick-skinned. You can't think that, I know for a fact that no other fan base in the country is as astute as a fan base as far as watching film, understanding what they need to see and what their expectations are, and then trying to get it to you so you understand that we understand what your expectations should be. And I mean, that's totally different from anywhere else, that I see in the country as far as the NFL, as far as fan bases. So because of that, he was prepared by Saban, but even, much, to talk about, Mac and talking about Tua, he has got a degree in it. He's got a doctorate degree in turning off everything that he doesn't need to hear and getting in there into the lab and really honing in on what he needs to do. It started in college. He got benched, stays there. They asked for, to win a game for him so they can get to the championship game. He does that, wins it for him, and still gets put on the bench the next game, which is crazy to me because that's how he ended up getting benched. But, I doubt seriously, and and this is just me saying it, I doubt seriously that Coach Saban would have done that. You know what I'm saying? Like, once he turned that corner, it's almost like, all right, now I'm forced to do that. I think if you'd have kept Jalen Hurts in that starting role going into next season and it'd been a legit quarterback battle, I think Jalen Hurts would have beat him out. I think he'd beat Tua out. I really do.
Yeah, I don't, but that's okay. Yeah,
I know you're a Tua guy. I know you're a Tua guy.
So we're not going to agree with that. Let me ask you about a specific individual Eagle defensive player, and that's Hassan Reddick. As a former offensive lineman, judging by what he's done so far in his career in the NFL, he's a pass rusher. That's what he does. He's going to get to the quarterback. He's going to be an all-out speed guy. He's going to make some tackles against the run every once in a while, but they'll be fewer and far between. But the strength of his game is absolutely getting to the quarterback. If the offensive line knows that, and the offensive coordinator of the other team knows that, how easy or difficult is it to match up against a guy like that, who's got a skill? He's proven that it works for him. The numbers are the numbers, but you also know that there are shorts in his game in other positions. Is he good enough that a team's offensive coordinator is going to take steps to keep him from doing what he's going to try and do?
Yes, that's why they want to run multiple fronts. That's why it's imperative that they do. It's just going to be hard for guys to really focus on that and be able to do that, not just within a series, but within plays. You jumping from a 3-4 to a 4-3 front is a lot harder than what people are thinking right now. You go from a 2-gap defensive line to a 1-gap defensive line. It's really hard. That's why it took, what's his name? That came over from Pittsburgh. It took him a long time. It took Hargraves almost half a season to really learn how to be a 1-gapper and get up the field and create havoc. It took him a little while to learn that. But, he's going to have to disguise things. He's going to have to use guys in different positions in order to kind of camouflage, where Hassan Reddick is coming, whether he's coming, whether he's not coming, and use guys in different positions. Like Brandon Graham will be at that same, I call it the Sam and the Will, and then the two linebackers that are deep, in a 3-4 system, I call that the Mike and the Jack. But the Sam and the Will going to have to be interchangeable with guys like Brandon Graham. Sweat, he's going to have to be one of those defensive end / linebacker-esque type of players. Barnett's going to have to be the same thing. Those guys are going to be in a position on regular first and second down where they're going to have to drop off sometimes and cover, but also come as far as, in pass rushing situations. So, it's not just Hassan Reddick and, because, if as an offensive coordinator, you're going to make sure that you allocate resources to stop him as a pass rusher. You're not going to do what people used to do and you see a linebacker there, send a running back over there or a tight end. He is good enough that he will beat that guy off the top and it'll be a sack. So they're going to slide the line to him. But then you got guys on the other side like Brandon Graham who's going to, turn around. Now he's going to have a running back or a tight end on him. So it's like, who do you pick as far as stopping this defense? And I think that's going to be very intriguing on how Gannon does that and goes about doing that system. I mean, it'll be a great system if everybody buys into it and gets on the same page. But getting everybody on the same page is going to be tough. What was the wide nine? What's his name?
Jim Washburn.
Jim Washburn. Well, his son is probably
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah is the guy who's basically in charge of those guys like Brandon Graham and Hassan Reddick in practice. He's the one that's coaching them up on how to rush, how to play the run when they're out there at that wide position, not necessarily a linebacker, but a defensive end. So I think he'll be in charge of the rotation and getting guys in a situation where they understand when they're supposed to come, when they're not supposed to come. So Gannon has guys in place that'll help him out. But, I mean, that's just a lot. That's a lot to ask a player to come in and change his whole mindset going into this season and thinking that he can switch from those type of schemes, not just within, a series, but within a drive.
Barrett, we obviously have limited time with you, so I got to get the NFL offensive lineman perspective. Jody and I were talking about Jordan Mailata and how stinking amazing it is. Do you ever take a step back and say, this is unfreaking believable? I remember going to 2020, it was the San Francisco game, and the Eagles didn't even want to play Jordan Mailata. And I remember talking to Stoutland, and, we're asking him, is he ready? Blah, blah, blah. And Jeff was like, I hope so. I don't know. They just threw him into the deep end of the pool because they had to. And all of a sudden, he turns into, I think Trent Williams is better, but I don't think anybody else is better.
Absolutely.
Right now. As an offensive lineman, can you impart to the listeners just how stinking amazing this Jordan Mailata story is?
He is a unicorn. To learn the offensive line position in 4 years is ridiculous. He's going into his 5th year, and he's an offensive lineman now. But just to learn, it's not just going out there and setting and playing football, but it's learning angles. It's learning how to have a strong side of your body in a side that that they're going to attack. Learning, where your help is, where you have to be strong at. You can't let nobody in the inside when somebody's trying to rush you. Knowing your power points, staying in your power points, making sure your knee bends, all that stuff. It took me until my 6th year in the NFL to really be really good at it. Good enough that, I was confident that I couldn't get beat if I did this type of set. Jordan Mailata learned this in 4 years. It took me up until my 6th year. So that means 4 years of college and 4 years of high school of being an offensive lineman. And he learned it in 4 years. That's crazy that he's that good, that he could just pick that up and be as good as he is. Now it helps that you're 6'8", 380 pounds, probably runs like a 4.9 40, a gifted athlete, but still just having a mindset on how to do it. And plus he's well-versed to playing in both sides. It's interchangeable to him, so to me, that's an amazing feat by that young man to even be an offensive lineman, number one, after playing rugby, but being at this age and only playing 4 years and being so dominant. I think it really clicked for him after the Dallas game 2 years ago when he was going against Lawrence, and Lawrence did something to him. And from that point on, he dominated Lawrence from that point through the game. They lost the game, but he didn't lose. He beat up on DeMarcus Lawrence. If you watch the Dallas games from this point on, he will make mincemeat out of DeMarcus Lawrence. And Lawrence knows it now, too, because he's so good, man. He's so big and so athletic, man. He is definitely a unicorn, man. You just can't do that. You can't take guys like that off the street and put them in a position where now they're NFL offensive linemen. That's a rarity. I have never seen it before. And big ups for Coach Stoutland and also Jason Peters. You know, we kind of downplayed Jason Peters in this whole, offensive line thing. Everybody sets like Jason Peters set.
Yeah.
They try to get that jump on the ball. They're very aggressive pass sets. They don't really set back like most offensive linemen do and play calm or passive. They attack. And that's all from Jason Peters and his mindset. So all of them have the same set and that same aggressive nature. So, JP, and Coach definitely they definitely set the tone on how this offensive line plays, and especially on Jordan Mailata on how physical he plays now.
All right, last one from me, Barrett. If I've heard this once, I've heard it 100 times from an ex-player. Damn, I was just born too early. Usually it has to do with the fact that the salary of players just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. But with the National Football League now, the amount of work that you have to do for every single week just keeps going down and down and down and down and down. Which would you appreciate more, the larger payday or the lesser work week?
Well, both of them, I'd be filthy rich. You know what I'm saying? I nickel and dime the league. You know, during my time in the league, I made the minimum probably 6 to 7 years out of my 12-year NFL career. You know what I'm saying? I only made like at one contract that I made over what the minimum was. And to me, during that time I was playing, I'm still not complaining. But I think about Big V. And I believe that I could play better than Big V even now.
Yeah.
And he got to sign a contract, 5 years, $50 million. Jordan Mailata, they got him at a bargain basement price of $64 million for 4 years. I would say that's probably going to be midway with what starting offensive tackles make in the next year and a half. I could say by the next year and a half, starting offensive line, good offensive lineman, I'm going to make $100 million a year. No question. Because the position is such a rarity. And especially with Jordan Mailata, because defensive coordinators understand how to play Jalen Hurts now. They know he loves to fade right. Well, now it's going to be up to Jordan Mailata because he's going to have to go left now. They're going to force Hurts to go left. And when you got Dickerson and Mailata over there, that's not a bad way to go either. You know what I mean? It's not a bad way. So that's, that defensive coordinators get paid millions of dollars to stop offenses, and I think that's going to be a major selling point on Hurts going to the left side when you have Jordan Mailata and Dickerson sitting there. That's about 700 pounds of beef right there. I go that way also.
Yeah. I think our buddy Matt Pryor might get paid after the season.
He's starting right now.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Great.
He's going to be a starter. Yeah. He got, I think, $5.5 million, Barrett, on an extension. I think if he plays well this season, he's going to get multiple years.
No question.
12,
he's starting
13.
left tackle, the blind side also.
Yeah. He is B. Brooks. Follow him there. You see at B. Brooks 72 NBC S. Watch him on NBC Sports Philly. Watch him here on the JAKIB Media YouTube page with Sports Take. Rob LSD Gunn does a tremendous job. Can't wait to see you at training camp, my friend.
Can't wait, fellas. I'll see you guys then, all right?
B. Brooks, go out and flip the meat. Come on, you're back. You're back here on the JAKIB YouTube channel in 2 hours. So get out there, bang to the meat, and get back in front of the camera. Barrett, thanks, bud.
Thanks, Barrett.
Barrett Brooks here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, gonna come back. Put a bow on the show.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
I was the mommy slam dunk champion.
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
All right, you got John McMullen and Jody McDonald. Last couple minutes here on Birds 365. When we return next week, the countdown will truly be on. We'll be down to single digits until Eagles open up their camp. John, we got the rest of the afternoon here, and it has forever been known as the Friday news dump day, that sometimes stories break on Friday, which we're surprised by. But if someone has a control of the narrative and they don't want to get as much coverage as they can, well, do it Friday late afternoon, because newspaper. And I know it's a different medium, and now
they still do it though. All habits die hard. It
really does, doesn't it? Because there should be no such thing as a Friday news dump day, because all we hear about is the 24-hour news cycle. Well, it just overlaps and overlaps and overlaps and overlaps. So there truly is no downtime. I guess it's slightly more down than others. Still waiting on the Deshaun Watson verdict, aren't we, Johnny Mac? Wasn't that going to be like 10 days ago? We're going to find out how long. Imagine if the Philadelphia Eagles had been the team to get Deshaun Watson. This town would be in pins and needles.
Yeah, this was the week. You know, I think everybody thought after the hearing, Sue Robinson would make a decision, but then she indicated she wanted post-meeting briefs from each side, and they were due this week, not necessarily a specific day. So she has those now. So now we are truly at the countdown. In theory, today could be the Friday news dump. I think it's more likely next Friday.
Let me just jump in there, because I do not feel any sympathy for the Cleveland Browns. They signed Deshaun, traded for, and then signed Deshaun Watson to the biggest contract, guaranteed money in the history of the National Football League. But I'm actually getting damn close to being sympathetic for them, because they're being strung along here. They got to get their season going. They got to have plans in place, and this process is taking way longer than it should have.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's the big deal? Make a decision. I agree with that part of it. I don't feel bad for the Browns. I think they're baked in. They know there's going to be a suspension. It's a matter of how much. And that, to me, is the bigger part of the story. I think it's going to be, if you're going to pin me down, Jody, I'm going to say lesser than what people expect, more than. And the only reason, because we talked to Dan Lust about it here, our sports legal guy. I talked to some other people behind the scenes. You know, judges are about precedent. I think Andrew Brandt said it as well when we had him on. If Sue Robinson lives up to her reputation as a former judge, she's going to rely on precedent. And the NFL doesn't have any precedent to suspend this player for a season. They've gone through it with Ben Roethlisberger. They've gone through it with Ezekiel Elliott, where they've been accused, but no police activity, no prosecution activity, and they acted the way they acted, and that's the precedent. So it's hard to reverse that to a judge from a judge's perspective and say, oh, this time it's got to be a full season. That's why I think it's going to be lesser than people expect.
Yeah, you and I are on the opposite sides of this. I think it's going to be the year, and I think it's going to be indefinite. if it has to go through Roger Goodell,
well, that's different, Jody. I'm talking about Sue's decision. Now, if the NFL appeals and it's got to go through Roger Goodell, maybe. But I think her decision.
Oh, you're just talking about her, not what the final outcome's going to be.
Yes, her decision is going to be lesser than what people think. And then it's up to the NFL to appeal if they want to appeal.
Yeah, I think there will definitely be an appeal. All right. Maybe we get that news dump today and we'll be talking about it on Monday. Probably not. Again, I'm getting this close to being sympathetic to the Browns. And I'm not sympathetic at all that the Eagles are not the team that is waiting on the Deshaun Watson decision. The decision was made. Jalen Hurts is the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll be talking more about him next week as we get down to single-digit days till Eagles camp opens. Be back here Monday on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, have yourself a great weekend. I'm going to continue to rest. I'll probably
feel better, buddy. Go get a nap.
I'm planning on getting a nap at some time this afternoon, but I will be hopefully better and pretty well rested when we return in 2-2 on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.